So yeah, I think my advice is write the game, have it done, have it ready, have it attached to the email to the printer, ready to hit send. Like just get as done as possible, and then do a Kickstarter. Don't worry about stretch goals or any of that stuff. Just for your first one, just do it. Use it as a pre-sale tool only, just because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Hi, welcome to the Dieku Podcast. I'm Gary Snow. Today I welcome Mikey Hamm, who is the creator of the game Slugblaster, which has teenage hoverboarders sneaking into other dimensions to explore, film tricks, go viral, and get away from the problems at home. It's dangerous, it's stupid, it's got parent groups in a panic, and it's the coolest thing ever. Slugblaster was recently nominated for both Best Art and Game of the Year by IGDN, and it took away the big prize. So Mikey, congratulations and welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, and thanks for having me here. This is great.
Well, Slugblaster looks like a really fun game, and I want to talk all about that and like your process in designing it. But first of all, how did you get started with this crazy little hobby? And actually, even before that, let's back it up even more so. You're coming from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I'm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And those cities do not like each other. We're 3 hours away,
right.
So we're going to have to put aside our differences. And
yeah. But I actually grew up in a little town called Three Hills, right, which is actually closer to Calgary than here. So
Calgary sphere.
I got I consider myself an ambassador. So
cool. Well, I had family in Two Hills, which is unsurprisingly, or like it's not even close to Three Hills. So
yeah, that's the alternate reality. Three Hills, right? That's
another dimension.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's go back to the interview. How did you get started in this crazy little hobby?
Well, I started playing D&D when I was 14 and played that all through high school, and then I've had a long running game group up here in Edmonton. We've played mostly D&D and until about 2016, and then we started wading into indie games and stuff like that, and that's sort of when I got interested in it. And it's about the same time I started getting interested in game design. So I had always designed little things for my D&D campaigns, but when I started designing my own games, that's when I was like, oh, let's see what's out here. And that's when I dove into the indie game scene and just played a session of Fiasco and had my mind blown. And then and now my group has like just a constant rotation of indie games and bigger games sort of rotating.
So what edition of Dungeons and Dragons was that when you entered into it?
Third edition, and then 3.5 a year or so later. So yeah.
Okay, so like you got the whole first, I guess, Wizards of the Coast. It went from TSR, the tail end to TSR, to Wizards of the Coast. And what appealed to you as far as like when you did make that jump into like indie games or different games? Like what was the kind of the thought process of your group as far as like your desire to try different things?
Oh man, I guess it's just so much. Like I'll take Fiasco as an example. Like when I played that, it was so mind-bending in so many different ways. Like, first of all, I'd never even thought about playing a role-playing game in such a different setting, right? I'd played D20 Modern and Star Wars and those kind of things, but the idea of playing in like sort of other genres, like Coen Brothers movie, the genre and stuff like that, and realizing like, oh man, any movie I like, I can play a role-playing game in. So that was huge. And then of course the format is completely different. It's very rules light and much more closer to like an improv exercise, very story gaming. And that just like appealed to me because at that time my group, we were very much story gamers at heart, always sort of fighting against these sort of trad like mechanics to try to make things happen that we wanted, and so that was just huge. Just like, oh yeah, there's so much else going on. And then just the fact that they were small, and I was like, oh, this is this seems achievable, you know, like this is a fun little thing. I discovered Grant Howitt's one page games, and that was just like, oh, this is like, it was like a completely new hobby. Suddenly I was like, this is fun. Like this guy's just selling these scribblings on a piece of paper, and like, and they're all just so different and so fun. And that was just like, yeah, then I was hooked at that moment. So
Yeah, a big hands up or shout out to Grant Howitt, because Honey Heist, I've interviewed many designers, and it's been influential for many of the
yeah,
people
for
that I've
sure.
interviewed, as well as myself. I remember seeing that game and going, "Oh wow, you can actually make a game on a single page."
Yeah,
And basically, with just that bare bone skeleton, you could have a great time. And it really reminded me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, of when you're young, 13 years old, you might not understand all the rules, but you
yeah,
can make a game work.
yeah, for
and
sure.
and all those one page games. And then obviously he's gone on to
Yeah,
bigger and better things,
absolutely.
well, maybe not even better, but like significant things
Yeah.
that in his career. And we'll talk about it later, but I know he was assisting in the development
Yeah.
of Slugblaster.
Yeah. Rowan Rook and Deckard helped sort of advise me while I was running the Kickstarter. And then he and Chris contributed a dimension for the game. So one of the guest writers on that. So
And
yeah.
how did you get in contact with them?
Well, I
In
was
the
just a
first place?
huge fan, and I just I'd finished sort of the alpha of Slugblaster, which was a lot smaller, more stripped down, and rougher than what it turned out to be. But at the time, I thought it was pretty awesome, and I'd sent it in because to see if they would be interested in publishing it. But you know, you gotta shoot for the moon with that stuff, and they were like, "Well, we're not really publishing, but we would love to help you with the Kickstarter." So that, and for me, it was just, they were just, you know, celebrities to me. I just wanted to, any chance
Yeah.
to sort of hang out and get their advice and stuff. So
Super cool. And so, where did the idea from Slugblaster come from? Like, are you a skateboarder? Like, is that your kind of background, that you were
I,
like in the
I,
skateboard scene?
I guess I skateboarded a bit in high school. It wasn't very good, but then when I out of high school, I worked at a youth center that had a giant skate park in it up here in Edmonton, and I worked there for quite a few years. And so that's kind of when I was exposed to a lot of skate culture and started skateboarding more myself. Still never got great, but enough to like understand the sport and understand sort of the mindset, and just really yeah really sort of understand what feels so good about skateboarding, and how sort of the skate scene thinks and stuff. So yeah. And then as far as how Slug Blaster started, funny enough, it didn't even start as a skateboarding game. That was sort of an element I discovered partway through. It was always going to be about teenagers in a sort of a sci-fi, a sort of contemporary sci-fi setting. You know, very, very like real. It started with a short story I wrote about just a kid in basically my hometown, except he had, you know, this pair of jet shoes, and you know, went to other dimensions to fight metaterrestrial fugitives and stuff, right? So it was just kind of that vibe. And then while I was making sort of a playtesting sort of a proto version of Slug Blaster with my group back in like 2016, we were kind of realizing, like, I was looking at like the wounds mechanic I'd had at the time, and just thinking like, oh, it's kind of weird that these kids are getting hurt. Like, is that right? And then I all of a sudden was like, yeah, wait, skateboarders are taking slams all the time. And that's sort of when I was like, yes, that is the group of kids who would go to other dimensions, even if it was dangerous. It would be these extreme sport kids. It'd be these skateboarders and parkour kids and stuff like that. And, you know, jackass kids. And that's sort of when that skateboard culture element collided with my, you know, teenage coming of age sci-fi thing, and Slug Blaster as it is now was born.
And you mentioned, so you based the setting or the town called Hilltop on Three Hills, which you are from.
Yeah,
And
Hillview. Yeah,
oh, Hillview, sorry.
Hillview. Yeah, but yeah,
Hillview.
it's almost a 1-to-1 of the My Town Three Hills. In fact, the map you can pretty much overlay it, and like I could point out my house on the map, kind of, and so, but yeah, and I just sort of took it and I cranked it up, and by cranked it up, I mean made it more boring, like kind of fantastically boring, because I wanted it to be a place that the characters would feel like they want to leave. You know, they want to escape into these lush other worlds, right? So I actually loved growing up in Three Hills. I really had a good experience there, but I remember going to school with kids who felt very much like trapped and didn't like growing up in a small town, and so I kind of channeled that, and when I was writing it, and yeah, so it's weird. It's even though I'm sort of lovingly skewering Three Hills a lot in the book, it's very much also sort of a memoir, yeah, sort of a love letter to where I grew up as well. So
And you've probably seen Ghostbusters Afterlife, right?
yeah, I
Which was
actually
filmed right around
yeah,
Three Hills.
I know a lot of people didn't like that movie, but just seeing all of that Albertan landscape and stuff, I couldn't help but love that movie. It just felt so good to see all that stuff, and yeah, I love that.
And I'm a sucker for young kids
Yeah,
like Slugblaster or Goonies or
yeah,
Stranger Things, where you're like the parents don't know what's going on, and
yeah,
you have to
totally.
like survive a big bad or something like that. And
Yeah.
why don't we just like add
Oh
Slug
yeah,
Blaster up onto the screen
yeah,
and just so awesome cover, a pizza.
yep, absolutely. That's by my main artist, Jace. They go by Sex on a Pizza as their artist name, and they're absolutely incredible. They just went above and beyond every element. I would ask them for something, kind of small and simple and whatever, and they would bill me for that, and then they would just keep upgrading their work, driving themselves out of business, I'm sure, but they just couldn't help but couldn't help but make something awesome. So
It's super
this
cool. It's like a Where's Waldo,
yeah,
supernatural space.
exactly. And that's something I love Where's Waldo books, and I've always loved these kind of like lush, detail oriented, or just sort of highly detailed pieces. And yeah, so what he's done here is each sort of slice of pizza is was one of the dimensions, the worlds in the book. I think he got, and there's about, I think 80% of the worlds he put in there. And this guy, uh, he he read the whole book, like, and before he did the art. Most artists don't do that, um, and just put so many little Easter eggs in. All the characters you see on there are characters that appear other places in the book. All the brands and like, just, I don't know. It's very cool. I was very blessed to work with Jace. So, um, and then
Well,
Jace did a bunch of sort of the in-world, like diegetic, like sort of art and logos and stuff. Like if there's like different like hoverboard deck designs and stuff like that too. So
cool. And then you noticed that you built the system off of Forged in the Dark.
mhm.
And was that like in the alpha state? Was that always the choice, or did it evolve over time?
No, I yeah, back in 2016 I was just sort of working with just nothing, just sort of my own thing. And I just kept running into problems. Things weren't really working. And then um, when Blades in the Dark came out, I looked at it and it seemed like that was doing so many of the things that I had been trying to do. And I thought, oh, this will be easy. I'll just reskin this. And it turns out that didn't work. So because I ended up pulling it apart pretty much down to basics and reassembling it. But I used so much of the cool tech that John Harper invented for Blades in the Dark. I ended up using in Slugblaster. So yes, so very much Forged in the Dark DNA in there.
And then here's the game cycle.
Yep.
And maybe just kind of walk us through that. So that you got the teenagers in the boring, air quotes, boring town.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, even in the short story I wrote, it is very much this hard divide between mundane, everyday teenage life and then this high fantasy, laser fantasy action. And so I just went with that hard cut. And so you kind of have these two phases, basically the run, and that's where you're doing all the cool stuff. You're going on adventures and you're going to parties, metaterrestrial parties, and you're, doing all that stuff. And then, and during that part, you will generate, you'll accumulate both style points from doing tricks and, succeeding on certain roles. And then you also accumulate trouble points from, messing up and getting attacked and all that kind of stuff. And then when you circled around back to downtime, in the downtime phase, the mode shifts and it becomes a much more like sort of scenes based, like freeform role playing. But in that time, you spend those style points and trouble points to trigger sort of events. So it's player driven. So a player can spend some style points to trigger an event where they get a sponsorship, for example, or where they get a girlfriend, or good things happen to them, good opportunities. And at the same time, they can spend trouble points to have bad things happen to them. And that's how they clear those trouble points, is by so that's instead of Vice in Blades in the Dark, you have to, that trouble has to come back to bite you somehow. And so you get to choose how it does in downtime by triggering scenes where you get grounded, or your girlfriend breaks up with you, or what have you. So.
And then you go circle right back from, you
right
pick
back
your next
into
run, and the GM, or actually, is it just GM in this one?
Yeah, I just went with GM. Yeah.
Okay, you didn't have a Slugmaster?
It's Slugmaster. I reference a Slugmaster occasionally, but I generally try to, if it's not broke, don't fix it, with stuff, and especially table culture stuff. And I just kept forgetting to say Slugmaster, so I was like, I'm just gonna stick with GM. That's but.
And then the vibes of the game itself, it's got that early internet kind of vibe, and early skateboarding days. And,
absolutely. It's definitely inspired by some of that, and just that was the era I grew up in, right? But it's technically set in sort of a non-decade, a kind of a mishmash of, they have smartphones, but the smartphones will look sort of like this screen you're showing, and so it's kind of an 80s, 90s, aughts to current, like those 4 decades can sort of mash together. But although some groups like to play in a specific time, a lot of groups pick the year 2000 or as the year if they want to play in like an actual historic time. So the year 2000 works pretty good.
And then speaking of vibes, and I have a little bit more later on, but just some of the in-game advertising and PSA and that kind of thing. When did that come to you as far as like the design process?
That's a good question.
And I can't help but I'll also throw this question in there. I noticed on the Kickstarter it was supposed to only be 6x9, and then it ended up being 9x9.
It was also supposed to only be 100 pages. And I ended up going with a 9x9 because I wanted to pack it in a pizza box, and I didn't know how to make a tray insert that would hold a 6x9 book well. So I just thought, hey, this will be easier. And again, not easier, not and definitely not cheaper to make a 9x9. But I really like how it turned out, and it makes for some really cool spreads. And it's just kind of fun to have a different shaped book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as these ads, I don't know when I got
And
that
what is
idea.
like, where does Wilkie's fit into your overall brand? Like, what's that from?
Well, Wilkie's is just the name of one of the factions in the game. It's the sort of like Nickelodeon Nerf gun, like candy maker. They're the sponsor that's all about fun and extreme, and they make this energy drink called Panic Energy and stuff. And then when it came time for me to like come up for a name for my like little imprint, I just thought, oh, that sponsor or that company in the game kind of fits my ethos pretty well. So I used it, like I referenced that for my imprint is called Wilkie's Candy Lab. So
Okay, it totally makes sense. And here's some more of that really good art and
yeah, this is by Scott Ford. He's from Winnipeg.
another
And
good Canadian.
yep, yeah, because Jace is from Edmonton and this guy's from Winnipeg, and he just does, man, just this awesome stuff. Really cool style. And his pieces are so good at showing like little slices of what Slugblaster is about. Like this image alone, says pretty much everything you need to say about Slugblaster, right? You got the ray gun that looks like a super soaker. You have these tentacles coming around, and then you have this kid's parents waiting for him at home after a run. So this is one of my favorite pieces in the book.
Cool. And then some more skateboarder shots. And so tell
Another
us about what are the classes, so to
Sure.
speak.
This art's by another Edmonton artist named Susanna Wu, and she just did. I think her character designs here are just absolutely incredible, and I think just added so much polish to the book. And it was really important for people to be able to page to the book and quickly see something that like where they go, oh, okay, so this is the kind of character I'm going to play. Like this is what a Slugblaster character looks like, And yeah, so I based the characters are based. You pick a personality, and then you pick a signature device. And there are 5 personalities. There's the grits, the grit. Then there's the guts. That's what we're looking at here. And then there's the smarts, the heart, and the chill. And those are sort of the 5 different personalities. And then there are a lot of signature devices, but those are like your robot companion, or your special sneakers, your Scram Cat sneakers. Those are so really going for that Saturday morning cartoon type thing, where
Yeah.
and
It's
so
definitely
by
got the it's
yeah,
got the
go ahead.
vibes, right? That like a lot of indie games really excel, especially that's why I love indie games, is like just creating a little world, a little slice of the world that you can just like dive into, and it's very unique and very well thought out and just
Mhm.
deep.
Yeah, that's what I had fun doing. Is I just wanted to make this world, and just make it even though it's completely bonkers, make it feel as real as possible and try to ground it. That piece, and as well as these ray guns you're looking at here, are by Galen. He's I always forget how to pronounce his last name, Purdue, but he's a good bud, and he is an awesome game designer in his own right. He made a game called Crash Cart, which is like a cyberpunk paramedic game. And he's just an awesome artist, especially with these kind of technical
Hmm.
like gear stuff. It's just so cool. So
Cool. And then you're talking about your hoverboards.
yep. Yeah, so this spread sort of, this is all your different board shapes you can pick. These don't have any different stats. This is just character flavor stuff, and just sort of my way of like, a lot of people who play this game aren't skateboarders, and they don't know much about it. And so I wanted to kind of, very gently educate a little bit about, just so they have something to go off when they're making their skateboarding characters. So I always think board shapes are really cool. So I made this little spread, and people, and this way, you know, it makes some people more who don't really care about skateboards a little more excited about it when they realize that there's all these different shapes, and they can like be like, ooh, what? So which one would my character have, and stuff. And then of course you don't have to have a skateboard. You just have to have something that lets you go really fast. And so some people pick BMX or laser blades or just, you know, free runners. Just this parkour it, and beyond. People do all sorts of stuff.
And here we have a great piece of art showing the freaking multiverse.
Yeah, another piece by Scott. This is this piece goes over like an entire spread, and it's also the art on the deluxe version I made. Came in a pizza box, and you could unfold it and set it up like a GM screen, and you'd see this piece of art run. That's what the players would see, and there'd be like GM info on the inside of the box. And
I thought that was a cool idea, and it made me think if Palladium were to do Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles today, that's what they should have done. But you beat them to it.
Well, yeah,
it is. Here's a nice, Here's a shot of Hillview.
Yep. So that's my town, just renamed to Hillview because you can see a hill from there, which is very much like Three Hills. Most people, when they come to Three Hills, they go, where are the hills? And you can kind of point to the horizon and be like, you see that little bump there? That's that's one of the hills. And so, yeah, this is the only I only changed a couple things. I added this big sort of what looks like a nuclear plant. That's like the big particle physics lab that I added.
You got your grain elevators.
Yeah, they're there. Water tower is real. All that stuff's real. I think I moved the location of one of the the hardware store or something just to sort of even out the space, so it wasn't too crowded in one section. But besides that, everything's here. My house would have been one of the little blue houses up at the very top of the map. That's where I grew up. So
cool. Well, you know, if Slugblaster gets big and gets, you know, Hollywood optioned and becomes a movie, who knows? This could be like
they can shoot it there,
also known as Hillview.
Yeah, that's right.
Those skirts of town. And then I really appreciated this assignment that one of the students did, and who did the little sluggy and who
so I did all the layout in the book. Like all the ads were built by me, but some of them use assets by my artists. So this is the slug itself, like the anatomy slug is by Galen as well. And then the little sluggy down in the corner, that's just a piece of clip art, like like royalty free clip art. So that I modified a bit. So
I love the grade and then see me after class.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Another slice of life of
great
Slugblaster
by Scott. Just he's so good at drawing bedrooms, sort of messy bedrooms filled with, like, again, detail. I love that stuff, and I love this piece. I love the Einstein given the hang loose up there, and I don't know, it's just such a cool piece.
Yeah. And then we talked about it earlier, the PSAs. And that you add flavor to the world. And
so there's this organization in the game that's sort of one of the factions called Doorways, and they're kind of like the concerned parent group in the game, and they're very worried about slug blasting. And so what I did in the book is I have a series of ads, I think four or five of them, in the book, all by Doorways, and they kind of they start really they start with this one or one before it that are really sort of like war on drugs inspired, you know, and they, you know, very scare tactics, hard line, and then you can see as the book goes, you can see Doorways changing their approach over the decades until they get to sort of that one we showed with the kids, which is, you know, them pivoting to sort of harm reduction strategies and, you know, inspired by like safe sex ads and stuff like that. And then finally, the one that we just saw before, this one that said deeper, that's them fully embracing slug blasting, instead being like, well, if kids are going to do this, then we're going to try to do it. So this is based on like the sort of like youth group type posters that I would see when I was growing up. I was very much a youth group kid, and so this is them, now they're trying to, they're cool, they're not doorways anymore, they're ways, and they're hip, and they're gonna try to meet kids where they are, right? So
Well,
yeah.
I thought it was pretty fun and a good way to build faction and world building. And then also, more technical drawings and of
Another one by
the
Galen, and
hoverboards.
and that's just a DeWalt drill style ad, basically. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's just like a fun little game to get you warmed up into the world and everything. And I know you were, like I said, nominated for best art. So obviously we
Yeah.
saw a lot of really good art,
Mm-hmm.
and best game in IGDN, and you were a winner of that. How surprising or shocking or nice was that?
It was amazing. Yeah, I was blown away. I worked really hard on this game, and so I'm very proud of it. But to see it be recognized, it is sort of a weird game, and and you never know with that kind of thing if it's going to connect or not. But to see other people are enjoying it just means the world to me. Yeah, no, I'm and it creates a really good opportunity for me and for my new publisher, Mythworks. We're going to try to take advantage of it and do a second printing, and it just makes me happy that more people are going to get their hands on Slugblaster, and because I had so many friends and guests and collaborators on this project, so it's awesome. I'm glad to show off their work as well. So.
And then maybe just like talk us through the process of so you went to Kickstarter, and then you ended up, like we talked about, the dimension changes, the more pages and that kind of thing. And then also being from Canada, I just I've talked to a lot of designers over the years that fulfillment and distribution is an absolute nightmare if you're not from the States, and even if you're in the States, trying to get it to other countries is also difficult.
Yeah.
So how did you find that process?
Oh, I hated it. I hated it. Yeah, it was bad. I love nurturing a community. I love building out the Discord and interacting with fans and people playing the game. And I love creating, I kind of like marketing stuff, and that kind of stuff I find fun. But yeah, doing printing and distribution and managing a Kickstarter and stuff was not my thing at all. I lost money on this basically because a lot of reasons. And I think, I should talk about them because if there's people doing the same thing, but my advice is don't do it unless you're done the game, because I thought I was pretty close, and then I was over a year and a half late delivering the product. And in that year and a half, a lot changed, including paper prices went way up. So between paper prices going up and my book getting, bigger and in multiple dimensions, and me just doing bad estimates, I was in the red for quite a while. And it wasn't until sort of newer buyers, after I'd already delivered, selling off the overprint, that I was able to just break even, right? And so so you got to be careful with those Kickstarters. And I even had, like I said, I had really sound consultation from Roan Rook and Deckard. They told me all the right things. I ignored some of them, and some things I just think just happened, right? So I think my advice is write the game, have it done, have it ready, have it attached to the email to the printer, ready to hit send. Just get as done as possible, and then do a Kickstarter. Don't worry about stretch goals or any of that stuff. Just for your first one, just do it. Use it as a pre-sale tool only, just because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. I'm fortunate enough that my wife's a nurse, and so we had a line of credit that I could dip into just to cover us while I had, you have to put like $8,000 on a credit card to get printed. That is, I know that, it almost broke us. It could break other people so easily. So big warning, like you got to be careful. Because especially if you accidentally create a hit on Kickstarter and suddenly any mistake you've made in your budget is just going to be multiplied, right? If you have a ton of backers. So I'm not trying to like discourage people from doing it, but I am trying to discourage people from doing it before they're absolutely ready. And the best way to do that is to have the game ready, because then you'll have your quotes, everything, you'll have all the information, you'll have your quotes, they'll be up to date. The, paper prices aren't going to change. Shipping is tough. It's hard to estimate shipping, but at least that's one factor you'll have. You'll just have a lot fewer question marks, right? So
did you, so I'm assuming you printed here in Canada? And then you ship from Canada, another.
Yeah, exactly. To ship a book that size to almost anywhere is you're between $15 and $25, right? Like, which is just not worth it for a lot of people to even buy your book, because most people aren't going to spend $60 on an indie role playing game, right? So you end up charging pretty low. Like your margins the shipping cuts into your margins so much, right? So it's tough. I think another piece of advice I would give indie designers, especially in Canada, is make some zines. Like start with some zines, because you can ship a zine by like letter cost mail instead, which is so cheap, like under $5, right? So, and you can do a 40-page zine that way, maybe even higher. You have to check the weight and stuff, but you can make a decent sized little game, and ship it way cheaper than if you make a book. And that would be a great first Kickstarter, is write a zine, have it all ready, laid out, art done. Like that's the thing. A lot of people wait to do Kickstarter because they want to they can't afford the art. But if you can work with an artist, and even, and if you can just, like, you're going to fund your game, like, especially if it's a small run, you're going to be okay. Right. So just, I would put, it's better to put a few $100s out of pocket to get that art before you've done the Kickstarter, than to launch a Kickstarter too early and end up like out of pocket a lot more, right? So I would just do a little zine, spend like $500 on art or something, and then worst case scenario, you have some cool art, right? that you spent. Have it all ready to go, and then do your Kickstarter, then print that, mail it out yourself. That amount and that scale, that will be fun. It can be fun to mail out a couple hundred little things if it's not stressing you out every time you mail a copy, because you're losing money or something while you're doing it, right? So But look at letter mail prices, because that's where, if you're in Canada and if you're doing like just like sort of really indie home printing stuff, or mailing it out yourself, that's where your margins are going to be good, is by doing that letter mail style, because otherwise it's not good. I'm again like super lucky that Mythworks has decided to take Slugblaster into their catalog, so now they can handle all that stuff. I'll never have to know the price of a bubble envelope ever again. I'm very happy about that, and now I can start to actually make some money off of the game, which will be great. I'd love to pay some bills and stuff, but if that hadn't happened, it would have been something I'm proud of, but definitely not something that was very lucrative, right? It would have just been like a cool like pet project, but which very easily could have happened. And I had come to terms with that, but I just would hate I'd hate for, someone to, bankrupt themselves or, just, stretch
Yeah.
themselves too thin. So.
Yeah, and you always see that people that get themselves into trouble, like a successful Kickstarter,
Yeah.
but the margins aren't there, and then it could really, really impact your love of the game.
And yeah, exactly. And it can really burn you out. I mean, burnout is so common in this anyways. Um, but yeah, it can. And yeah, it's tough because you see a Kickstarter and it'll be like, 30,000 raised. And it just seems like to everyone, like, oh yeah, man, you did it. But like, that's just all of that money could be like spent and more just shipping the game to people. Right. So you always remember that when you're looking at other people's Kickstarters too. It's like, just because it looks like they've raised a lot of money doesn't mean that they're necessarily making a lot of money. So
Yeah, for sure. And so good advice for upcoming designers that are starting to just dip their toes into the business. But how did you get involved with Mythworks? Like, did you reach out? Did they reach out to you?
Ray from Mythworks, he's a member of the sort of Blades in the Dark hack community that I'm in, and that I was that they're sort of like, the group of friends that I made online while making this game that, I've great friends from there to this day, and who, I never would have finished this game without that community, and Ray was a part of it. And so when I was done the game and Ray, took a look at it, and I guess it fit with their sort of vision of what the kinds of games they want to put out, which are games with good world building. And so he reached out to me, and we wrote up some contracts, and now it's fun. Now we're planning this big second print, and we get to talk all the stuff we're doing. We're doing hardcover, we're doing like spot gloss, and the redesigned pizza box that's like gonna be like higher quality, and it's gonna have dice with it and maps and cool stuff. So it's super
cool.
It's super fun, and it's a lot more fun designing that stuff when like they'll figure out the logistics of shipping it and stuff, and they have all the they have all the spreadsheets and all the connects and everything they need to do it, and it just it's awesome. It's great working with other people. That's fun to do.
And do you have a release date, or is it still just a work in progress?
For a couple assets, we need to get a render of the box, and then once we get that render, then we're gonna launch the thing. We have a pre-launch page right now, just at slugblaster.com, that people can go to and sign up, like put their email in, and they'll be notified. But yeah, I'd say sometime this fall.
Cool. Well, Mikey, I want to just say, congratulations on the IGDN.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Or what it is, IGDN. Yeah. Okay. Make sure I get that right. For the win for the best game, and it looks like things are heading in the right direction with like the next edition. And just sharing some of your, it's not always easy to come on here and kind of share what went wrong, because nobody likes to kind of admit that. But I do appreciate that, because I have a lot of aspiring designers that watch my channel. And
I will say, as hard as it was and as long as it took to make, I did honestly enjoy every minute of it as well. Like, it's weird. You can feel two things at once, but making games is fun, right? Like,
or it should be.
You get to make, exactly. It should be. And if it's not fun, that's a good sign you need to take a break, or you need to step back and take a look at what's going on, because it should be fun. You're making a game, so doesn't mean you always feel like sitting down and writing, but it should, in general, you should be enjoying it. So
yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for sharing a little bit of your journey, and can't wait to see the second edition.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This was great.